Well, hope things are going well with you. God bless you. Wanted to kind of come to you today and talk a little bit about the pyramid text of King Una. So I want to talk about that today. I hope that you are doing well. We're going to talk a little about the pyramid text and what do they say and kind of jump into what they are and how things are going just in terms of I hope that things are doing well with you. And I want to talk about this conversation because I thought to myself, when I think about pyramid texts, and we're going to talk about what they are and who King Unas was, but if you had to write pyramid text, I kind of asked myself, if I had to write my own pyramid text, or if pyramid texts were written about me, what would they say? Like, what would they say? When you think about it, at the end of the day, the ancient Kemetic people looked at the things that they wrote in their tombs, the wonderful hieroglyphics, the wonderful things that were included in their tombs. They used them as a way to not just tell you about like where they were going, but to also give you an idea of the kind of person they were and the character they developed over their lives. So as we talk about it, we take it for what it is and what's presented on the walls of people's tombs to get an idea of what they value. And so we're going to jump into that and talk about that. And I want to say thank you very much for those who are supporting and joining. And I want to kind of jump right into the topic, and I'd love to hear your conversation and your thoughts as we kind of put them below. But as we think about it, pyramid texts and the things that people wrote on the wall. Now, before there was the book of the dead, people like to say, or the Perneb, the book of coming forth by day, or before there were the coffin texts, there were the pyramid texts. And these were, as I mentioned, these were writings, holy writings that were on the walls of people's tombs. In particular, when we talk about pyramid texts specifically, we're talking about people within the 5th and 6th dynasty in the Old Kingdom. And you see an Old Kingdom dynasty right here around the same time as King Unas would have written his pyramid text. You see an Old Kingdom tomb right here, and when you think about it, what the person was saying was, here is my life. They were also saying, obviously, that I'm going to be living in the afterworld, and I want people to come and take care of my soul and to communicate with my soul and provide needs for me. And I want to be able to be in communication with those in the living, and I want to be able to live in a happy life and to live peacefully. They're saying all those things about the afterlife, but they also said that the key to that was about what kind of person they were, the character they were. So they weren't just saying about what they were going to do in the afterlife. They were also speaking to what kind of person were they? What kind of life did they live? Like, what did you do while you were alive? Because at the end of the day, the Kemetic people believe, and Cushite people believe, that how you lived your life would determine how you would spend your afterlife. Were you going to be a soul that was filled with evil and had done bad things and evil things and have your soul devoured? Or were you going to be someone who's going to basically join God? Join up with the gods and be able to walk among the gods. And this whole idea of divinity I want to kind of talk about, because at the end of the day, what they're really talking about is measuring, a way to measure or talk about the character of your soul. I always say that we're not really bringing anything back, obviously, with us. When we pass away, we're not taking any of this with us, obviously. We're only basically giving back to God the character of our souls. How did we develop ourselves? What did we become? What type of character? And character is a way to kind of describe it. When you think of your own character, when I think of my own character, what does that mean? How is that developed? How has that changed from when I was a child and as you grow older? What have you actually become? Not what have you obtained, not what have you gotten, not how big this material things, but what have you become? What type of person have you become? And what people on earth that you've interacted with can speak to your character? Can speak to what you, because that's really what they were talking about. When you think about the pyramid text and you think about the things that are written on the wall, that's really what they were talking about. How is it that the people that you've come in contact with, the people that God put in your life, your family members, your friends, things that you've done, your coworkers, what will they say about you? And does that change over time? Does that get better over time? Are you someone who has a character that's impacted people in positive ways? Do you strive to do that every day? That's literally what we're writing about when we're talking about the pyramid text. And it's almost like a eulogy, right? You think about people who were eulogized when they pass away. Obviously, we do very nice things and very nice eulogies, but the Kemetic people essentially kind of wrote their eulogies, if you will, in stone. Right? And there was a lot of spiritual significance around it. So as we talk about the pyramid text and we talk about things that were written on the wall, the pyramid texts themselves were really text, right? They weren't as many pictures. They're really text when we talk about King Unas. And they really are talking about that person's soul, and they're talking about that particular ruler, or it could be queens or other people who were interacting with God and going to a place where they're going to join God and become one with God. And the reason why they earned the right to do this is because they behaved themselves in a God-like manner while they were alive. Think about that for a second. The ability to behave yourself in a God-like manner. There was no concept in Kemet that people could not do this. There was no concept that you're a ruler or a queen or a scribe or a priest or a governor, all these people who had tombs, right, whose tombs we see, could not achieve or behave themselves in a godlike manner. Not just pleasing to God, which is significant, obviously being pleasing to God, but also behaving in a godlike manner. And if you stop for a second and ask yourself, what is a godlike manner? What do I see God as being like? And that idea of really, it comes down to treating others the way you want to be treated. Many people will have concept of what God is like, and they may say God is a merciful God or a vengeful God. They say these different things, but when you get down to it, when you go to God to pray, and you ask for forgiveness, or you're looking for mercy in your life, what type of God, what type of universe, what type of force do you want to respond to you? Do you want somebody who has mercy? Do you want somebody who responds? Do you want some kindness? Do you want something that's powerful, able to accomplish what you need? Like, what is it that you're looking for when you're at your worst, when you're in need and you decide to pray? That's the kind of God we're talking about. And when you think about that, if God can do that, the Kemetic people were also saying that you and I can. That you, and as a matter of fact, our ability to do that, to be godlike, was what gave us the keys to eternal life, which gave us the keys to the afterlife, and gave you a lot of power and gave you a lot of privilege. A lot of things that you earn, not that you just got it, but things that you earn from an afterlife perspective. So that's what the pyramid texts were all about. That's what they were saying. They were speaking to someone's life. In this particular case, we're going to talk about King Unas. We're going to talk about him and his life and just kind of give you some perspective, because we look at this is his tomb, his pyramid. It's in the northern part of ancient Kemet. It's in Saqqara, and you see the remains of his pyramid. And at this time, during the fifth dynasty, because he was the last king. King Unas was the last king of the fifth dynasty. And we've talked a little bit about Sahure and other people in the fifth dynasty. But he was somebody who would have had, a number of things at his disposal. And this would have been after, the Great Pyramids. So this would have been after the Great Pyramids of Giza. This would have been after the Step Pyramid, after the Bent Pyramid. All these things are coming about. King Unas is coming in the past then. And when you think about it, when you read about or look at the Great Pyramids of Giza, for instance, which are the iconic, symbols of ancient Kemet, you don't have a lot of writing. You don't have a lot of pyramid text inside. Literally, the Great Pyramid is stone. It's mostly these huge, magnificent, extremely expertly cut and displayed and calculated stones placed, one on top of the other, angles, and with remarkable, archaeological and architectural achievement. But it's not a whole lot of text and writing inside. You have a few things inside the chambers that would have held the pharaoh, the ruler's body, but it's not the type of writings that you see when you go into other tombs of later times. The pyramids are not doing that. You find the writings in other places. You're going to find them in temples, but when you start to get to the fifth dynasty and you start to get to King Unas, you see more writings on the wall. You see more of this idea and more clearly expressed, where you can start to read, what did they believe? What did the ancient Kemetic people believe? Why was it significant? And you start to see this litany of things. So right here, as you start looking at it, you start to see this litany of things. And as I'll show you that right there, this is some symbol of King Unas's pyramid right there on the inside of it. And you can see words, and you can see hieroglyphs written on the wall. And at the very top, you can see in the ceiling, you see stars, because ancient Kemetic people would look at, the kings and the rulers as being like the stars that never set. The stars in the nighttime sky that never fell below the horizon. They would be like eternity. They'd be there forever. And so there was symbolism with respect to that. But King Unas has in his pyramid, for the first time, writings in more detail. And you can see that these are pretty detailed writings, and they really are just a litany of things. And one of it is a litany of things where we talk about pronunciations and proclamations to help his soul begin to join with Ra, to begin to join with Ra tomb, and to begin to take his place in the afterlife, and to live forever, to assure that he doesn't die and he doesn't kind of decompose and cease to exist, if you will. But it even goes beyond that as we kind of talk about it, because I want to kind of point out not just his pyramid text, but also you can see the cartouche there that has like that animal that's in the center of that oval shape, and you see the wavy line, and you see the symbols of that's King Unas's name. That's his name in a cartouche. And so you can begin to identify ancient Kemetic people and rulers by their cartouches and begin to see what they're saying. So as we start to think about this, he is writing a lot about him being able to join with Ra and him being able to join with God. And I want to kind of touch on that a little bit and kind of jump into that topic, because as I do that, I want to kind of delve into it. And how does that relate to us? And what can we say? Because I always believe as we read these things, these things are speaking to us. These things are telling us things about our own lives and what we can accomplish. And why not think that you can? Why not dream big? Why not understand that the impossible can be possible? Why just associate yourself with sin and those types of things? People say we're born in sin. Why associate? What if you can be divine? Why not think about the impossible? Why not allow yourself to push for more in your divinity, in your spiritual growth, in your life, right? It's not just for your job. It's not just for your bank account or the material things you might gain or the things you want in your relationships. Think about how you can grow spiritually. Why can't you reach for the mountains spiritually as well? And that's what the Kemetic people are telling us. They're telling us that I'm reaching for the highest of heights. I want to become one with God and like God. I believe that is possible. That's literally what they're saying in their text. That's literally what they're saying. I believe that is possible, and I'm going to live my life. And it got to the point, because by the time we start to see the religious writings written down on the wall, these thoughts and this theology is fully developed. I mean, it's developed. It had been practiced for years and years and years, hundreds and hundreds of years. And so it's developed. It's not, it's going to continue to develop. Things will change, but it's very fully baked at this time. It's clear they've been practicing this for a while. And this whole idea that at some point in time, people are saying it's not just that it's possible or it's possible for somebody else. By the time we get to the 5th dynasty in the Old Kingdom, people are in stride. People are believing and understanding that you can manifest God, that you can be divine, that you can manifest these things. And part of that is morality. So it's not just, is it possible? They're believing that they can, and they're striving for it. They're saying that in their ways, in their tombs. And it's not just, the rulers. So many things we've read and we've talked about in this channel, and we'll continue to talk about other people who were governors, people who had official capacities doing other things, who had tombs, who said similar things. I live my life in this kind of way. So I kind of want to touch on that as we kind of jump forward, and God bless you. Thank you so much. Hope that you are doing well. That you guys for joining. God bless you for anybody who's joined. So as we think about that, when did King Unas live? He lived from about 20. When did he rule? From about 2353 to about 2323. So he ruled during the 5th dynasty. He was the last king of the 5th dynasty, and it was during the Old Kingdom. And one of the things we talk about as we kind of jump into his life and what his pyramid text was saying, he was saying a lot of things with respect to being able to join and be godlike. So one of the things that's there and is prominent in his pyramid text is the fact that his spirit is indestructible and indestructible, that he has lived his life in such a way that his spirit will not be destroyed, cannot be destroyed, and that he's going to join his father Ra-Atum. So we've talked a lot about, Meteorology and the whole idea around what people might believe in terms of just Atum and those type of things. We've talked about Ptah and Amen. So he talks a lot about Ra-Atum at this time. So Ra becomes a prominent deity, and so does Atum and eventually Amen. So he's talking about Ra-Atum as the supreme creator. And Unas, the king Unas, is going to join Ra-Atum. And it's interesting, a couple of things I wrote down with respect to this and reading this. And you can read Marian Leichtram, you can read pyramid text, you can look it up, you read these things for yourself and get some writings that have been done by various people who have translated them and things that you can look at, but to get your own understanding of it. But he talks about him being the son of Ra. And he says, Ra-Atum, your son comes to you. Your son comes to you as a spirit that's indestructible. Unas comes to you as a son of your own body. Now, we talked about the other day about the whole idea of resurrection and that being a part of Kemetic thought, long before, Christianity and Christ and that type of thing, that being part of Kemetic thought. But the whole idea also of the king and the ruler being of the body of the same substance, literally of the bodily son of God, right? That's something that you see in Kemetic literature over and over again. And you see this in King Unas in his pyramid text. You see him saying, your body, the son of your body, the person who came directly from you is now coming back to you. So this idea that someone can be God's son, can be a direct offshoot of God and divine is talked about in his pyramid text. But it's not just that. And that concept is there, and this concept, because there are thousands of years before Christ, that concept is there. It's the fact that you could even think of yourself as literally a divine body, a divine son, a divine daughter of God, a divine body, that you could think of yourself in that way is a remarkable thing. And stop for a second. What does that do for you? What does it do for in your life if you begin to think of yourself as a divine body, as a divine person, as a divine soul that's here, as somebody who literally, by the fact that you're here, by the fact that all the things that happen that could thwart and make life not happen and come forth did not happen in your case, and you were able to make it. The fact that all the things that we think we know now and we may have in terms of knowledge that we've accumulated, there's still so much we don't know, obviously, and everybody was born here through other means. It's not like somebody just made you come. You were coming through other means and other powers and other forces other than just your mom and dad. These are life forces that were bringing us all into being. Without our knowledge, right? Nobody can create your DNA and make you who you are. Imagine if you stop for a second and say, this is who I am. Imagine if you had that kind of view of yourself. There are a lot of things you might experience in life that you wouldn't take. And I'm talking from experience. I'm not just talking, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of people who experience abuse, domestic violence. They come in contact with somebody you don't know your whole life. You meet somebody and all of a sudden, you're with them for a short period of time and they're beating on you and they're calling you kinds of names and they're debasing you. And they're people who sometimes think that they can't get out of it, or maybe that they're not deserving, or for some reason don't think of themselves in a way that this is not behavior I should accept. Now, obviously, it gets very complicated. I understand. I know that it gets very complicated in that. But when you initially get that person who says something to you, and you can have people who are even famous, who may have a lot of money or a lot of fame, and when they interact with somebody, that person treats them less than God. Treats them less than divine, less than the angel that they are. And they take it that first time. The first time he or she calls you out of your name. The first time he or she is disrespectful. Before they even smack, before they're disrespectful. The first time they hit you. The first time they don't treat you right and don't treat you respect. And you accept it. Why? Why accept that? And you think about, what if I had a different view? That I'm literally a child of God. I'm literally a divine being here to develop my soul and to bring it back to God. And anybody who interacts with me is less than that. I'm not taking that. I'm not accepting it. I know it's not truth. I'm not going to let that come on me. I believe that. And I also believe that you are a divine body. I also believe that you are here to develop your soul. I also believe that you have God in you just like I have it in me. It's not that I'm better than you. I believe that we all have it. What if we had that experience? Would it make you not treat someone that way? And not allow anybody to treat you that way? What if we had it? I think so many times of our children, and we talk about it so much, which is important. Our children who see things on television, on the news, and in movies and music that say that they're bad or say that they're less than, that speak, because I think about it the other day I was listening to, and this is a little bit different than what I was talking about, but I was listening to someone talk about the standard of beauty, and this was a woman from Africa, and I believe she's African-American, or she was from Africa. She was talking about the standard of beauty and how there's a different standard. You have to look a certain way, like a singer or something like that. And I thought to myself, why do we have that as our standard of beauty? Like, why do you or me personally believe that? It's one thing to say that that's what they put out on the TV and the news. It's another thing to say that I believe it. You know what I'm saying? So it can't bother you as much if you don't believe it. If you hear somebody say something that's not true, you don't even let it sweat. It's like, water off your back. You don't sweat it because I know that's a lie. If you had a understanding of yourself as a divine being, a divine view of yourself, you maybe wouldn't let all of these pressures that come around you affect you as much, because it's not true. But our children listen to these things and they actually believe that they can't do because they are some way. There was a young boy I knew at one point in time, I may have shared this before, who was very smart, very bright young man. He was in junior high school and he took a test. I think he was in junior high school, about to go in junior high school, somewhere around there. He took a test and he scored in like the 95th percentile, something ridiculous, something very, very high in the entire state where he lived for math. Now here's a young man in his, pre-adolescent age, and he is scoring very, very high in math. And he was going to be invited to come to some school that was near there to be able to study math and to work with him and that type of thing. So yeah, but I don't know if he ever got the chance to do that, but very bright young man. And then later on, several years later, maybe 3 or 4 years later, or whatever the time frame was, when he was going into high school, he was doing bad in math, and he wasn't doing it. And I was like, dude, like, what happened? Like, why are you not doing? I mean, you're smart. I know you're smart. You tested better than like 95% of the people in the whole state. Why are you not doing well in math? And he said, well, I'm kind of scared. I'm kind of afraid because I don't really want my friends to think I'm a nerd. I don't want my friends to think I'm Caucasian, like I'm white. So I don't really push myself that way. I don't want to be perceived as being white. And I was like, what? First of all, math is not Caucasian. Like, that's completely not true. And what is it about the peer pressure that's making you think that you don't deserve this, or that you don't do better. Why are you letting what other people say affect your mentality? Of course, there was a lot into it, and we had to talk, and hopefully he's doing better now. But the idea that our children see these things and think that because somebody says something or can frame for them how high they can go in life, because somebody says only Caucasian, only certain people do math, only certain people do things, like, that's crazy, right? And that doesn't affect you as much if you don't believe it. If you don't see that as being a reality, it doesn't affect you as much. So it becomes very significant. The idea of being a divine being, the idea of seeing yourself as manifesting God, you don't see limitations on God. If you identify your spirit, but you don't see limitations on it. Yeah, I can do that math. I can do that science. I have the ability. Why not me? I took the test. I scored higher. Just about anybody you're seeing in school, he scored higher than. I can do this. I don't have to demean myself or put myself down because of what other people think. But so many of our children are experiencing that, where they don't have the mental structure and ability to overcome the lies that are being told to them about their abilities, about their history. And we get down to it, this whole idea with King Unas and the pyramid text and what Kemetic people were saying about themselves and about you and I becomes so important. I don't think we should identify ourselves with sin and identify ourselves with being born into sin and cannot possibly please God. I mean, that's crazy to me. That should not be done. That is not going to lead to a healthy view of yourself or a healthy life. You're going to forever be thinking you can't do what you can do. It's like a flea mentality. It's like the flea that can't jump out of the jar, thinks that he or she can't jump out of the jar and just never goes, even though that flea has way, many hundreds of times jumping ability, can get out of that jar, but thinks that he or she can't. And we end up going through life with that mentality, hitting the lid of a jar that's not really there. And from a Kemetic perspective, you are able to do anything you put your mind to, and especially when you align your will with God's will. When you align your will with God's will, yes, you can. And the soul that you create, the character you create, the kind of person you become significant, and you can become godlike. So King Unas begins to talk about in the pyramid text, in his pyramid text, he's talking about that he was a spirit that's indestructible. And he's like, Ra Atum, this Unas comes to you, and that I'm a son of your own body, and that your son is coming to you, and that when you think about, they talk about the 4 cardinal points, the towards the north and towards the east and the west and towards the south, that there are various deities that are there. And in this instance, he talked about Tahuti and talks about Aset and talks about Asar. Go proclaim to the deities that rule those areas that Unas is coming. Unas is coming, and Unas comes as one like the morning star that shines over the Nile. Like, he comes as one to join with the deities. He comes to be not just like them, but to be among them, right? To be of them, to the point where they're also respecting him and allowing him to sit down with the creators of the universe, with the deities and the forces there at the beginning of the universe that created the universe. Unas, because of the way he lived his life, was able to sit down with them and interact with them. And you begin to see this written in the pyramid text, written in stone, as they begin to talk about it. And there's a part that goes on that talks about, Unas being the spirit indestructible and being like a deity, and that Unas it talks some things about Unas beginning to kind of eat the entrails, if you will, of the gods. The gods are being offered to him. And I want to speak to that just a little bit, because people will talk about King Unas and they talk about the Cannibal text. And let's put some context around it. In ancient Kemetic temples and in their theology, obviously, as in many theologies, people sacrificed animals. So, Jewish people did it. People sacrificed animals, right? Many people did that. And as a part of that sacrifice, it was believed that you were giving this food to the deity to eat as a symbol for them to be nourished, right? You're giving it the essence of what's in that animal as a gift, and the best of what you had to offer, your best to the deity, which is why, Hatshepsut did the famous expedition to Punt and brought back myrrh and resins and trees and various things from the land of Punt, from God's land, to offer to our men in Kemet in her temple. She wanted to offer the best to God. And so that idea of performing a sacrifice was that idea. And obviously the priest ate the meat afterwards. Well, they kind of flip in the King Unas text. It's clear that they're talking as if the gods are being offered to Unas, that the gods are being prepared like you would prepare an offering. And it talks about Unas basically eating their insides, if you will, but it mentions at the end, he's eaten and ingested the knowledge of the gods. He's ingested their spirits and their knowledge. He's actually taking on the food of God. What if you could eat the food of God? What if you could stop for a second and say, what if There was, our divine ancestors, or somebody very, very smart like Imhotep, or very, very smart. What do they study? What kind of food do they take in? What kind of food does God eat? What things does God talk about? What things do amazing people who are saint-like people who are God-like, what do they spend their time on? What food do they intake? And when you start to think about it, you say, wait a minute. They probably spent a lot more of their time thinking about spiritual things, thinking about things to advance society, thinking about things to advance a nation. When you think about Imhotep and what he did with the step pyramid and how he's considered to be one of the first geniuses we talk about, right? Him taking the Mastabas and setting them one on top of the other and creating a step pyramid, which was the precursor for the pyramid itself. What made him come up with that idea? How is he living his life and spending his time? When you think about people who are, whether they're doing well in basketball or they're doing well in some type of science, whatever they're doing, a lot of times when you see somebody who's doing well in a subject in an area, they spend a lot of time thinking about that. They spend a lot of time working on it. They spend a lot of time with their focus on that subject. That's why they're good at it. And the same thing is true with spirituality. The same thing is true with how you develop your soul. If you spend your time thinking about God-like things, you're going to develop. When you ask, you will receive. Just like Jesus says, if you ask, when you knock, the door will be open. If you seek it, you will find it. And so it begins to be very important that the secret to part of becoming successful in the things we want to do is to spend our mind on it, spend our time and our mind on the things, focusing on the things that we want to bring about. Spend our mind and time on it. If we find ourselves or we find our children in situations where they can't do the things they want to do, look at how we spend our time. You'll probably find that we're spending our time on things that don't give us fruit, that don't bear fruit in our lives. If you want to accomplish something, spend your mind and your time on it and you'll accomplish it. So he talks more about just being that of God and being able to come and to join the deities and become one with them, literally become amongst them. And it's a significant thing. It becomes like a wonderful, beautiful thing that he writes about in terms of his interaction with God and what the pyramid texts are really saying. So I kind of sum that up. And jump into that. God bless you. Thank you. What a minute. Thank you. As you think about it, stories in history. Thank you so much for sharing that. When you think about it, you kind of you're looking at the pyramid text as being things that are writings on the walls of tombs of kings and queens in the 5th and 6th dynasty that talk about their divinity, that talk about their ability to live in the afterlife as gods, as a manifestation of God, that talks about their ability to live forever and to hopefully be joined with the gods and to have peace with God and to live their life and their spirit in a way where they're indestructible, that they are living forever, so to speak, and that their lives, that their morality, the character of who they are and their morals is what got them there. That was a significant part of them being able to join God on the other side. When you think about being godlike, you think about morality. You certainly don't think of God as being not moral, right? That whole concept of being moral and doing unto others as you would have them do unto you becomes a central part of Kemetic theology and philosophy and of Ma'at. By the end of the New Kingdom, you see the balancing of the scales and that iconography much more prominently, obviously, as you go further and farther in Kemetic history. But the idea that your heart is weighed against the balance, that you are doing right things with your life, and that gets you to that God-like place where you can be where you want to be on the afterlife. That's what it's all about. And that's what the pyramid texts are talking about. That's what King Unas is talking about. So I wanted to share that. I'd love to hear what you think. And as you think about yourself, and you think about our lives, how is it that we can deliver on the other side of his life, bring back a character and a character of our soul as developed and as highly skilled as we can, as highly developed as we can in terms of our being God-like. So I just wanted to share that and kind of drop that. Please drop some more down below. I want to kind of touch more on that. We'll be coming back with more things. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon.